How many of you here have an older brother? Would you raise your hand? How many of you are an older brother? Would you raise your hand? This story is so powerful and gripping because it really rings true. We just saw that powerful retelling. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him, but he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property and with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him?" "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Jesus was addressing this story to the Pharisees. He wasn't condemning them. He was reaching out to them, telling them, "You're the older brother. Give up your pride. Give up everything you think God owes you and come home." Home. Home, that almost magical word. The son, the guy who played the son was right. Home has such a range of thinking and feeling about it. It's even on our computers. You want to get back to where you started, you hit the home button. You know, at least if you get back there, you can start again. A big part of the American dream is to own your own home, or more accurately, to own the house that you can make into your home. Robert Frost famously said, "Home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to let you in." A little later in that same poem, he said, "I think I should have called it something you somehow don't have to deserve. Home." I saw a picture that Scott Miller had taken some time ago. This might be familiar to you. Do you know where this is? That's the intersection of Route 72 and Old Jonestown Road. Some of you remember that place. It isn't there anymore. It isn't there anymore. It's nothing like this. The strong feelings that surround the idea of home reveal this longing in us. We want something familiar, a place where we belong. Places like this keep disappearing on us. In the book, The Prodigal God, Tim Keller writes, "The strong feelings that surround the idea of home reveal a deep longing in us for a place that absolutely fits and suits us, where we can be or perhaps find our true selves. And yet it seems that no real place or actual family ever satisfies these yearnings, though many situations arouse them." That keen observer of the human situation, John Bon Jovi. Those of you who are chuckling recognize the name. He's a rock star. And he had a mega hit with a song titled, "Who Says You Can't Go Home?" I think there are people in California and West Virginia right now who can't go home. The wildfires that to date have killed 150 people, the floods in West Virginia, unprecedented flooding, people discovering that the house that used to be theirs is now gone. They can rebuild, perhaps, but it won't be the same. And for some of these people, death has devastated their sense of home. This world as it now exists, and these things that we try to get a sense of home about, this world is not the home that we long for. Again, Tim Keller. The message of the Bible is that the human race is a band of exiles trying to come home. The parable of the prodigal son is about every one of us. This is not the home we long for. It can't be. We were designed for something different. We talk a lot about the Garden of Eden. That's the home that we were designed for. In Eden, we were made to live every single day in that face-to-face encounter with God, adoring Him without fear or pain or disease or parting, without shame, without guilt. But we live on this side of Eden, and everything on this side of the garden is broken and fallen and sin-infested. And the very best of it is still something that we don't feel completely at home and still long for that place where we fit, where we belong. Since Eden, we've been exiles. It's a theme that we see all through Scripture. Adam and Eve, those first two, exiled from the garden. Cain killing his brother, made to wander and exile from home. The people of Israel, an entire nation handcrafted by God to become His representatives in the world, and they experienced exile. Sent far away from home. I never understood why exile was such a big deal. You get to live in a really neat new place. What I didn't understand until I became an adult is that there is a magic about home, and exile becomes a horrible punishment. Whether the exile is Napoleon on the island of Elba, or the father who says to his teenage son, "If that's the way you're going to be, there's the door, and don't come back." And the son says, "All right, I won't." And they could die in that split relationship, exiled from each other. How often do we think to ourselves, if only we could get back to, if only America could be like it was, and then you pick the time that America felt like home. How many of you actually enjoyed what we just did? Some of you thought it was a really great experience. I'm standing up here and I'm doing it with this side, and when I went down the first time, it was great. And then I got up and my knees went, you know that strange crackling sound your knees make? If only my body would do what it used to, if I could be. But I'm exiled from that body. This is what's left. If only I could go back to the time when I looked like I did then, or when I was popular like I was then. No matter where we want to get back to, No matter how good it was, there was always this yearning, this longing for a place that I fit, a place that I'm my best self. And trying to go back to that place, trying to find satisfaction for this yearning, trying to go back there can be a terrible disappointment. Last August, Janice and I visited the area that I grew up in western Pennsylvania. We had lived way out in the country in my grandpa's house. He sold it to my dad. It was a big old house. It had that pebbly siding that old houses often had. And the house was a little run down. Our next door neighbors, Gladys and John Sumner, he was meticulous about the way he cared for his house. Didn't have much time for 6 neighbor kids who were always getting into something. Our house had a sun porch, and on one corner there was about a 15-foot pine tree. And one year my brother, when he was about 10, 11, decided it would be cool to get up on the sun porch roof and jump off it and onto the tree. He missed. He's okay, but we still love to tell about that story. We shared this long driveway with Mike and Laverne Wukovich. That's a name you can only find in a story or in a cartoon somewhere. They were rough around the edges, but they had good hearts. In the front yard, there was this little, thin maple sapling that I had brought from the woods behind our house down and planted in our front yard. Might have been 6 feet tall when I brought it down. We lived in a hollow, and western Pennsylvania is full of them. It's a narrow valley, and splitting this narrow valley was another valley, and connecting the two sides of that hill, there was a railroad trestle. It was the tallest thing in our lives, and we often had dreams of being caught halfway across the railroad trestle when a train came. All of us had that dream. In the summer of 1975, we moved to western Pennsylvania. The house was sold, and other people took it, and then other people took it. And in 2008, my mother went back to visit, and she took a picture of the house. This is the house that I grew up in. The maple tree is no longer skinny and small. The sun porch is gone, and the pebbly siding is now steel siding. My dad put the steel siding on. You can see a little bit of the pine tree back there that my brother missed. And in the far right is John and Gladys Sumner's house. And I was a little saddened to see that the house I grew up in had been kind of let go and was in poor repair. But it was still my house, the home that I grew up in. Last August, 2015, Janice and I visited the place that I grew up. And John Sumner, the fussy neighbor who was meticulous about his house, was long dead. His immaculate house had now become a dilapidated drug hangout. That railroad trestle that was the tallest thing in our lives looked like a little erector set thing because spanning far above it was the bridge of a superhighway. I really couldn't find that 15-foot pine tree. And the worst thing of all that hit me as soon as we got out of the car, the house is gone. All that's left is a patch of chest-high weeds. My house, the place that was home for a long time, is gone. Home is partly about a place, but we who are exiles will find in our tenure on this planet that God plans to redeem Home is about a relationship. It is about a place, but it's far more about a relationship. The relationship with the one who made us. There is a price to be paid for going home. The father welcomed the prodigal with open arms. But the older brother, understand what was happening here. The younger son had taken his share of the money and wasted it all, which meant that 2/3 of the estate, which would go to the older son, was still intact. That was what he would have. Now the younger son has come home, and dad is welcoming him, which means that the upkeep for this son who's coming home is going to have to come from the older son's portion. Why should my money go to pay for that wretch who wasted everything? No wonder he's upset. He doesn't want to see that kid come home. He's going to be losing some of his own. Fortunately, we have an older brother who was willing to pay that price so that we could come home. And now, instead of telling us, you've got to earn your way back into this family, our older brother comes out and wraps us in a bear hug and says, you trust me. Welcome home. That relationship with Jesus is what gives us hope that one day we will be home. In that place and in those relationships where we fit. But until then, He's still working in us. But no matter what you have to go through, the loss of your home, the loss of loved ones, the loss of your own health, the loss of your sanity, the loss of all the things that make you who you are, our big brother is still holding us and saying, hang on there, because I'm going to take you home. Pray with me.